Okay, here we go. So, October 19th, 2021, let's confirm member access. So, as a preliminary matter, I am Brian Colleran, Chair of the Newbury Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. So, CONCOM members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ben Gehagen.
Yes.
Brad Duffin.
Here.
Dan Streeter.
Yes.
Frank Wedenkamp.
Not here yet.
Oh, okay. Mary's still not here. And Peter Pecos.
Yes.
Okay. Town staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Samantha Holt.
Yes.
Okay. So, introduction to remote meeting. Good evening. This October 19th, 2021 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until April 1st, 2022. This order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to the commission members prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak and, if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your intention after you've been called. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of commission members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except CONCOM members and staff, please remember to mute your computer or your phone when you're not speaking. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets or cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps to generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking, name and address. If commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. Regarding public comment, there will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during public hearings. After commission members have spoken, we will afford the public an opportunity to comment and or ask questions as follows. Samantha, the conservation agent, will seek questions and comments through the Zoom, through the raise hand function in Zoom. Video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you don't see a yellow hand, click on the participants button. A list of participants will open the display on the right. At the bottom of this participant area, you will see an option to click on a raise hand button. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the More function next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone's keypad. We will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hand in the order in which they are listed, which is determined by the order in which people click on the raise hand function. Participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address and then ask a question or make a comment. I will afford the applicant or participant or his or her representative the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your question. We will then continue down the list of those in the raise hand comment and afford the participant or applicant or representative to speak. Please note that the chat feature is not part of the official record and should not be utilized during this meeting. Anyone wishing to address the commission must do so through their video or audio connection. The chat feature is intended only for the use of the commission and its agents, and only for the purpose of communicating with individuals in the event of a disruption. Please also note everyone is expected to conduct themselves in the same manner they would at an in-person meeting. Any disruptions will result in removal of the disruptor to the waiting room, where you will receive a direct chat from Samantha regarding the disruptive behavior. Once again, Samantha, our agent, will read that you. Once again, any disruptions will result in complete removal from the meeting with no readmittance. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. All right, very good. So before we get to the agenda, did anybody come in? Do we have Mary or Frank?
We do
No,
not have Mary or Frank yet.
All right. Well, we've got enough numbers, so we're good. All right, they'll show up. So, first item on the agenda. Where are we? So, our next regularly scheduled meeting dates are the 2nd and 16th of November. We have a whole pile of minutes to review and approve: June 1st, June 22nd, July 13th, August 3rd, September 7th, and September 21st. So, Sam, why don't you bring us up to date on the
Sorry.
pile?
I believe the only ones that have been there for any length of time were June 1st and September 21st are both done and finalized and have been available for review. I don't know if Chrissy was able to get the rest of them in before the end of the day.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve June 1st and June 22nd minutes.
Oh, sorry,
we have a-
June 1st and September 21st are the only
Correct.
ones done.
June 1st and September 21st.
September 21st.
I second
I'll
that motion.
second.
Okay, roll call. Benjamin,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Brad, sorry,
Aye.
Peter,
Yes.
and I'll also vote in the affirmative. Brad, if I get alphabetically mistaken here, I hope you don't mind. I've been doing Ben and then Dan for so long.
That's not a problem. I do not feel slighted,
Um,
Mr. Chairman.
All right, so that's that, and then presumably we will be able to pick up those other minutes next time.
Yes.
So, moving right along, we have public hearings, Town of Newbury Near Shore Sand Placement Project, DE01, proposed modifications to a previously issued order of conditions, commission approval for modifications to include an additional 100,000 cubic yards of sand to be deposited to the near shore site. Additional sand will not affect the footprint of the project. All right, who do we have for this one?
Mr. Chair, do you want me to ask the request that you basically just stated?
No, Jeff,
Say that again?
it's all right. Is the town gonna be represented by you tonight, or is
It's going to
someone
be
else?
represented by Tracy and I, and, Bob will help us if we need it, so.
That sounds great. So if you or Tracy would like to begin.
Then
feel
I
free
would,
to.
I would ask that basically the town would like to ask to modify the existing order of conditions to allow for the placement of up to an extra or an additional 100,000 cubic yards of sand at the Newbury near site disposal site using sand from the Portsmouth Harbor Federal Navigation Project, I never can say it, Piscataqua Sand River. The sand will be placed into existing authorized site and will be placed within the current boundaries of the site.
Perfect. Tracy, do you have any other details that you want to provide?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. That's what we're seeking.
So some sand just became available through these dredging projects, and the engineers felt like it would be good to add more within the current footprint. So it's just going to increase the volume, but keep the footprint.
Correct.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, let's keep going. Dan?
No comment.
Okay. Pete?
Samantha, any comment from your perspective?
No, I looked over the original order conditions, and I don't believe anything actually even referenced sand volume, but I believe it was referenced in the plans and in the proposal and everything, and where it's not gonna affect the footprint. think you're all set.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. I'll ask a question or two. So, and Sam, this is just, I didn't get to look at the old application. Why does adding so much sand not sort of spill out of the footprint? Was the footprint that large that the deposition, like it doesn't, I don't know, 100,000 cubic yards seems like a lot of sandbox to drop into the same spot. Is it just a really big thing? I mean, if I remember this project, it's a giant rectangle off the island, right? It's just like a really, really big rectangle. Is that all?
Brian, I can maybe, and I'm sure Bob can add to this too, but it is a good sized site. I believe the 150,000 cubic yards was going to be spread with the dredge, probably 2 different loads, maybe more. And I believe the depth was maybe 6 inches. And, you know, Bob, if I'm giving any, Bob Worry, if I'm giving any information that's not true, certainly chime in. So the ability to put more in and the amount requested is not going to be significant when it's spread out over that much. But when you start to have the movement of the tides and it starts to get spread out in that alluvial rotation that exists there, it could be very beneficial for a lot of different reasons to that area, because it seems that the center of the island is right in that vortex that gets a lot of wave action right in front of that groin. And that's where we are lacking some of the volume in the sandbar. So getting some volume out there means quite a bit to our town. And Bob,
Yeah.
have I missed anything?
No, Jeff, I think I think you summed it up pretty well. The site has already been authorized for 150,000 cubic yards, and with the additional 100,000 cubic yards that's become available through the Portsmouth Navigation Project, that can still all be placed within the boundaries of the site for the initial placement. That site is, I think it's over 80 acres in size. And so this in total will add about 1.5 feet to the elevation of that site.
Okay. And then will this sort of, what's the way I want to ask this question? Does this just sort of move up the maintenance schedule? You know, as opposed to doing the original amount of sand and then waiting for some amount of time before getting more sand. Does this, you know, is this like changing the brakes in your car before you need to? I don't know what kind of metaphor to use for the question. You know, I just don't know enough about sand. I'm just curious how this works.
So I'm not sure I totally understand your question, but I'll try to answer. I think that obviously with the erosion problems that take place on Plum Island, Newburyport, Salisbury, the addition of any sand into that system can only help. And the idea behind a nearshore placement is that the sand should eventually make its way up onto the beach. So that's a net positive. That's why we do this. The additional 100,000 cubic yards, the reason that wasn't originally planned for is because that was destined to go to another location, but that location turned out to be not available. The Corps of Engineers didn't want to pursue that. It was not anywhere near Plum Island. It was actually down in the town of Hull. And so rather than let this beach compatible sand disappear and be placed in an offshore deep water site by the Isle of Shoals, we're trying to take advantage of getting that sand and keeping it in the littoral system of Plum Island so that it benefits, hopefully, the beaches.
And as Bob presented
Okay.
so eloquently, Brian, this doesn't come available that often to us.
Yeah. No, the answer made more sense than the question, so that's good.
Yeah, and this, as Jeff just indicated, this is really sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity. We don't very often get the ability to place 250,000 cubic yards of sand anywhere off of Plum Island. So it's definitely a net benefit.
Okay. Thanks for humoring me on that. All right. So then, Sam, let's turn to the public.
Yep, we do have one question. Second.
Hi, Sam. I guess that's my cue. In general, I'm supportive of the idea, but I have a question about how back in the
Steve?
day, and this
Steve?
is Pete Engine on 14th Street.
Sorry, I can't add you to the spotlight. There's too many people in here, so I
Okay.
apologize for that.
That's okay. Back in the day when sand was brought onshore at an additional expense, the sand was brought onshore down to the groin at the Plum Island Center. Does this proposal include trying to bring sand, whether it be onshore or offshore, south of the groin? Again, I think the project is a good idea. I want to be clear about that. But I'm just curious about the locus where the sand will be deposited. Because certainly there has been, in the past 15 or so years, some erosion south of the center. And it might be desirable to place sand south of the center groin. So I'm asking, while at the same time saying I generally support the idea of bringing more sand in the vicinity of the island. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Sam, we got any more?
Not that I can see for this one. Nope.
Yeah, Leslie has her hand physically up.
Oh,
Leslie Matthews.
Thanks. Thanks very much. I just was wondering if you could give, is this going to have a cost to the town? And if it does, what would be a decent estimate of what it would be?
Tracy. Oh, do we have to unmute Sam?
We had initially appropriated a little over 200,000, I think 250,000 to be exact. But we've been notified recently that we are not going to have to incur any cost. The state is going to bear the cost completely. So great news. Great news. Thank you.
Very good news.
All right. Excellent. Anybody else?
I don't see anybody else. Unless someone else sees
All right.
someone.
Going once, going twice. All right, great. Who wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this sand as proposed.
I'll tweak Brad's motion to approve modifications to the existing order of conditions to allow for an additional 100,000 cubic yards of sand to be deposited to the nearshore site.
Seconded.
All right. I'm going to just take that as a single motion. Roll call. Benjamin,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote in the affirmative. Okay, great.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Bob.
Thing. Let me go on the agenda. All right. So next up on our agenda, we have the Town of Newbury, 31 Plum Island Boulevard, DEP 050-1368. A continued notice of intent to convert an existing single-family dwelling into a municipal bathhouse with interior improvements, including the removal and reinstallation of a concrete entry to meet requirements for creating an ADA accessible ramp to the town bathhouse, continued from the 9/21 meeting. All right. So who's repping the town on this one?
Good evening. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting. I'm
right.
here tonight with just about everybody. We've got Rachel Harris, the project architect. I've got Sean Malone, the project engineer. We have James Surratt from DPW, Tracy's here. Peter Burnett, the building inspector, is here, and Michael Kennefic, town council, is also present. What I'd like to do is share my screen and go over the site and its resource areas and existing conditions. Turn it over to Rachel to just describe the project, basically the work on the structure, which the primary reason we need an order of conditions is a ramp, handicap access ramp. And then I'll go back through the performance standards with the commission after Rachel's presentation, and then everybody else here is available for Q&A as needed. So if it's okay with the commission, I'd like to share my screen. All right, so I think everybody at this point is familiar with the site. It's a one-story building located near the beach center. It's within the AE 13 floodplain. There's a slight separation out of the flood zone, and then seaward of the site, the VE 16 area near the town parking lot there. As you can see from the site, it's really pretty much developed wall to wall. You've got this single story structure. You've got a raised landscape bed here. You've got this area which is fenced in. You've got an area of concrete right adjacent to the structure right here. And this is, I apologize, it's not Turnpike, it's Boulevard, but so my graphics is off a little bit, but basically here you can see the site again. Notice that not only is this entire site developed, but pretty much everything around it is hardscaped and developed. There's very little dune function that occurs within this site. Floodwaters come down or deflected by the, during a flood, they would be deflected by the landscape bed and by the solid structure and kind of move along their way. Here's a view from the east. Again, you can kind of see that really there's no dune functioning anywhere near this this area in any significant manner. So as I think you all know, this is a bathhouse project, and we're looking to renovate the structure to include the bathrooms and the restrooms and make it publicly accessible through a handicap ramp. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to Rachel. And Rachel, if you need me to turn to the next sheet, just let me know.
Okay.
And Rachel, why don't you walk through it?
Okay, so we were looking at this structure, which takes up pretty much almost the entire lot. The driveway that you can see next to the building is in fact an easement from another property. And so we added 5 toilets to the women's room, 3 toilets and 2 urinals to the men's room. There's handicapped accessibility throughout the space with the appropriate turnarounds and clearances as needed. We also provided a conference room so that the DPW will have a base of operations on the island in the event there was any sort of emergency where they would needed to be out there for an extended period of time. The building is very low to the ground. It's only about 8 inches step up from grade to the door, which allows the ramp to be quite small. We wanted to give a bit of an area after you come up the ramp, hoping that people will get some of the sand off their feet before they immediately track it into the building to reduce the janitorial concerns there. And I think that's pretty much it, but I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, so let me just add a couple things. The ramp material will be a PT frame. It will have to be embedded slightly into the ground because of the depth of the framing, and to get a ramp to land, that does need to be embedded. It will be supported on piles, and the surface will be a composite decking. Rachel, correct me if I've got any of that wrong.
That's all correct, and the structural drawing showing those piles is on the previous page.
Right, so.
Yeah, over on the left.
Right, So here's the pile locations, the framing plan, and then this would be composite decking. So on the site plan, what I can show you, we're removing 95 square feet, I believe it is, of concrete here. We're installing the deck and it goes within the existing raised landscape bed. So we modified the landscape bed, kind of cut into that. And at the very bottom, to blend the bottom of the ramp and have it meet with a 1% slope. So it is fully, you know, ADA here. We have a 5 by 5 by 2 minutes. So we get rid of 95 square feet of concrete here. We do add about 25 square feet here. Your regulations, Wetland Protection Act and bylaw are all about adverse effect. And we are actually improving the overall condition by a net reduction in hardscape on the site. In addition, there's not really a lot of function that this ramp structure really impacts because of the fact that it's within an area where you've got a raised bed and you've got this concrete here. It really doesn't have any adverse function to speak of. The ramp itself and the access as drawn actually complies with building code. And I understand there's been some confusion in the fact that some of the work on the structure itself does require a variance from the BBRS, which is the way the building code allows for exceptions to be made to certain things. And in this case, it would be substantial improvement. But those are all things happening on the main structure that don't really constitute an alteration to the resource area because of the existing structure. And once the variance is issued, it would comply with the building code, which meets the standards in the bylaw. So I'm happy to go through that in more detail with you guys if you have any questions. But I think at this point, what I'd like to do is turn it back to the commission and answer any questions that you've got.
All right, thank you, Tom. Yeah, let's do a lap of the commission. Let's see what's on everybody's mind. Ben, you want to go?
Sure. Tom, just help me out a little bit. In previous iterations, there was some discussion about removing concrete, adding gravel around the exterior of the building. Is there anything to do there now, or just going to leave that as is?
Let me actually double check that with Sean Malone. Sean?
Yeah, no, we're basically leaving everything around the building as is, except for just this front portion of the building that you're seeing. So as we talked about, we are removing that existing concrete pad. Much of that would be taken up with the new composite deck, but the additional area of that concrete pad would then be just backfilled with stone.
Thank you. That's all I got for right now.
All right. Okay, Brad?
Oh, it's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
All right, Daniel?
I think the only real question I have is just about the 50% rule compliance.
Sure. So actually, what we can do is let's just look at that. All right. Basically, what we're doing to the structure would constitute a redevelopment, but redevelopment is only prohibited in the V and the AO zones. And in all other area, all new buildings shall comply with state building code regulations. So if we get the variance from the BBRS, as we fully expect to do, then this complies with the building code regulations because those regulations incorporate the variance. So this is approvable under the bylaw because we're not in the V zone, we're not in the AO zone where it would be prohibited.
Thank you.
Except with the list of, there are some exceptions that are further down in the bylaw, but and the ramp fully complies with the bylaw regardless. So if for any reason BBRS said you can't get the variance, we can look at, okay, do we reduce the size of the bathrooms? Does the town have another use for the structure that isn't a substantial improvement? We still would need a handicap ramp to get the public in and out of the building.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. And then I see Mary popped in. Did you just jump in, Mary? Were you here at the beginning?
I just got in.
Okay. Do you want to pop a question on this one, or you want to wait this one out?
I'm gonna have to wait this one out. Thank you.
Okay. And then Peter.
Yes, thank you, Brian. Hey, Tom, thanks very much for the presentation. One quick question. I remember, I think on the last iteration of plans, off the deck, there was going to be a shower. Is that, I don't see that on the plans now. Is that out of the picture?
I believe we've removed the foot washing station, which I think is what you're talking about. So that's been removed. We tried to really simplify this to make it much easier for the commission and for everybody to kind of understand, because this is really the critical need. The other things we thought would make it a nicer facility for the public to use. And, you know, maybe we can revisit that type of thing in the future. But for right now, we want to get this thing through with, you know, the critical need, which is the ADA access.
Appreciate that. That's my only question. Thanks very much.
Okay. So then, Tom, you want to bring up the bylaw again, just because I'm presuming this question will come up.
Yeah, sure.
You want to go to 95.4 B?
Sure, right here.
Yeah, you want to speak to the 20% detail?
Yeah, so first of all, you've got to remember, this is talking about no redevelopment shall be permitted within the V zone or AO zone, except that structures or buildings may be redeveloped, repaired only in accordance with, right, all that stuff. It says in all instances reconstruction. So we're the V and AO up in the top part. In this part, it's basically saying that the commission shall authorize anything provided it's under 20%. Anything over 20% becomes discretionary. This doesn't say everything has to be under 20. It just says if you're over 20, it's a discretionary decision by the commission.
Right. And then in the in all instances, comma, is referring only to the V and the AO zone, not to arguably the whole everything, the whole.
Well, everything before that is V and AO. After that, this sentence, the way I read this, is a little bit less clear. So I read it to apply to everything, that it basically says reconstruction, renovation, repairs to structures of buildings shall be authorized. So you guys, if I had a project in front of you that was at 19.9, under this paragraph, you have no choice in terms of this performance standards to authorize it.
So Tom, excuse me, Mr. Chair, if I may. So why would that, if it's under 20%, if it's, as you stated, 19.5%, why would he even come to the commission?
Well, because this isn't the only performance standard. I just believe that this basically says it shall be authorized. But the way I read this is it's just for the 94.54B. And then you still have to go through all these other sections, right? So we're outside of the V and the AO zone, right?
But you would, so following your logic, Tom, and not to beat a dead horse, because I want to see the Red Sox beat up on Houston very badly tonight.
Don't we all?
If all of the provisions of 95.4 were met, except for B, and the question being, if it was 19.5%, you would not need to come to the commission?
No. I would need to come to the commission because I don't get to decide whether or not these things are met. You guys do. I make my presentation to you, but we can have reasonable disagreements at times over how you comply with some of these performance standards. Some of them are really pretty black and white and you meet it and you don't. And others are a little bit room for discussion. Let's just put it that way. In this case, where we fall is we're already over 20%. We can't, this is the type of thing that in the past, the commission has always, if we're trying to make something handicap accessible, that's a legitimate reason to want to make something larger. The heartache usually comes if I've got a big building and I want it for, a big single family home, and I want to make the big single family home even bigger. Then the amount of mitigation I have to offer if I'm over 20 is much more significant. That's
Understood.
So where we're at is, I think this is certainly consistent, and the reason that I think you have discretion in this area. We just want to add some coverage for a handicap ramp, and we're getting rid of some concrete in the process. For subsection C, because we are outside the V and the AO zone, this is really the one that applies to us. And we are
Right. We got it.
right. So we're doing a substantial improvement, and we're going to comply with the building code through the BBRS process that allows these things to be accepted.
Thank you.
All right, perfect, Tom. Sam, how many public comments do we have lined up?
We have one. We've got Steve Mangin.
All right.
Steve, go ahead.
Hi, this is Steve. Can I confirm that you can hear me?
Yes.
Yep, you're coming through.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I have previously submitted a email to Sam and the administrative assistant, and I hope you all got it, and that can become part of your deliberation and part of the public record. So I'd like to confirm that. So let me say, I oppose the project as proposed. The structure needs to be elevated. If someone else was coming in with a proposal to do some substantial renovation in this area, they would be required to go up on pilings. There should be no exception made for this structure, since we want to get it right and not end up having a situation where the money that the town spends to make for public restrooms be washed away due to storm surge or whatever. So I don't think an appropriate outcome of this is to give a variance to say that the structure will not be elevated. Forgive me, I'm being a little bit disjuncted because I'm trying to follow the email that I sent without reading the email to you all. But I can well imagine that other people in similar areas to this are going to come in and say, well, gee, you allow this project to occur with more than 50% cost expense of the current building value, and you do not require them to go up on pilings. I don't want to go up on pilings either. Back in the day, the term arbitrary and capricious was used to say that when the government is behaving in a way that is not uniform across the board, it was called arbitrary and capricious. So we're setting ourselves up for town litigation for doing things that are arbitrary and capricious. I also want to point out that some of the compelling evidence for doing this is based upon what is still a conference room for the police station, hardly a public need that may override many, many things. And the whole concept of having a conference room for the police in the flood zone, the AE zone, really flies in the face of how we want to provide for first responders to be able to respond by going to a place which is not in the flood zone. So I think there's a lot of questions about whether there's indeed a compelling public interest, which is one of the things that is meant to be operative in terms of giving a variance. Because lest we forget, we're talking about trying to get a variance from the existing regulations. The existing regulations are pretty clear. Go up on pilings. And we're trying to get a variance because of a compelling public interest. In addition, what has not been provided by the applicant is a rationale of alternative analysis for what could be done. And in my email, I pointed out how there were alternatives that could be done to satisfy the need or the perceived need for public restrooms in this area. In my analysis, which was not meant to be exhaustive, I pointed out how one could bring in mobile public restrooms, some of which are ADA compliant and could be sited on the property. These mobile public restrooms could be moved in the event of a storm. Now, similar things have occurred just down the road at the Sunset Club, where there is a mobile kitchen that has been sanctioned by the town, a mobile kitchen which can be removed in the event of storm considerations, which may flood the area. And a perfectly rational, good thing to do, move the kitchen in the event of a storm problem. So the idea of having something mobile is certainly within the discretion of the town and something that the town has done before, and therefore doesn't trigger that arbitrary and capricious standard. I also noted that it's the Sunset Club, and I haven't been there to see what they are, but some sort of porta potties have been approved by the town and particularly the Board of Health for being okay in an area that is subject to flooding. My point being that other options besides a hard structure, permanent structure, as the town is proposing, are certainly capable of satisfying the perceived public interest. So my alternative analysis, one which the town has not done at all, would seem to point to how there are options rather than having a hard structure going in, and what is the AE zone, which would otherwise require a, I'm not sure about whether it's 9 or 13 feet, whatever it is, but in any event, some sort of elevation, which could, what's the word? The integrity of the proposal could be compromised. So I think there are other alternatives that perhaps are even better, but certainly have not been included in the town's analysis. I also noted in my email to you all that the stormwater management plan was not included, in part because this is a single family residence. Well, what's being proposed is no longer a single family residence. So I would ask, because I don't know the answer to this, but I would ask whether a stormwater management plan is appropriate for the change of use that's being requested by the town. Next, the oil fill cap. The plans for this site show an oil fill cap, and I believe I've sent a email to the building commissioner and perhaps to sorry about this, my phone is ringing, but I'm trying to shut it off. Anyway, I've sent a photograph previously of something that's called the oil fill cap on one of the plans. And when I've walked by, it certainly looks like something that a oil delivery truck would have delivered fuel oil to in the past. To me, that suggests, and as many of you know, and I certainly know from my previous work experience, underground fuel tanks leak, and they certainly need some sort of look-see about whether there's been a leak to the underground. That was certainly the case down at the old Angie's fuel station, and some remedial action was needed. So I look at that, and that's also not part of the plan to investigate whether there was an underground fuel tank present at the site. And again, I apologize that my phone keeps on ringing. But I think the fuel tank needs some look-see. In addition, tank. When I walked around the property, which is town-owned, so I could certainly walk around it, I noticed the presence of a propane tank against the side of the building, which may be in the easement section. Point being that I know under previous discussions with Concon, the presence of propane tanks sitting on the ground were a concern in terms of how the site was going to be managed. So here we have a propane tank, which is arguably in the AE zone, and it's sitting there, and I don't see any discussion about what we want to do with that to let's see, I think I've got one other one, which is, and this is again where I don't know, so I'm looking for the Concon to weigh in about the buffer zone. My understanding is that the AEC extends basically to across the street from the proposed structure, and whether being within 100 feet of buffer zone requirements is something I don't know. If it does not appear to be part of the application. So in summary, I would say that I think that we need to take a look at the buffer zone. We need to take a look at the propane tank. We need to consider alternatives, which, and I sent you a link to some websites about alternatives that could be entertained at this site. And I want to go back to that to emphasize the point that rollaway trailers, restrooms, which can be ADA accessible, could be brought into the site so that in the event of a storm, they could be rolled away, much like the mobile kitchen at the Sunset Grill. And that hasn't been entertained, and maybe it's a better way to do business at this site to provide public restrooms. Or we could do toilets, much like the toilets that are at the Sunset Club, which could be carried away in the event of a storm. I'll note that a couple of weeks ago, when there was concern about a storm, the portable toilets that have been put in at the center, now since removed, were hauled away and then brought away the next day. So the idea of moving portable toilets, whether they be on wheels or not, is something the town has already entertained. So I think that the town has failed to give a compelling reason about why a permanent structure should be put in this particular location without going up on pilings. That said, I welcome comments from the Concon or questions or anyone else that decides to but provide comments to the Conservation Commission. I appreciate the time you just gave me. And depending on what I hear, I may want to raise my hand again and respond to things that I hear. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I see some hands going up from further public comment. Rather than necessarily repeating Steve's points, if you agree or disagree, let's just sort of leave it at that, and state the agreement. But let's try to stay in new territory and relatively on point. Sam, who's up next?
We have Jack Rubicki.
All
Good
right.
evening, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, Brian. Hi, Ben. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Chief. Thanks for having us, and thank you for having the meeting. May I ask, please, the permit that we're all reviewing, is this over strictly the 300 feet of impact for the moment? Or is this over the building? The way I looked at the permit online was this was only speaking to the 300 square feet of deck impact and wasn't speaking to the building. I just want to clarify whether or not that's a fair statement or not. I'm asking.
Jack, who do you want the answer from? Are you looking for the applicant's representative? Do you want, or do you want that from the commission?
No, I honestly, Brian, it just seems like if we're going to talk about the whole building, I don't have a problem. But I thought the way the permit is read or the way it's filed, it's only speaking to the 300 feet of impact of this ADA ramp, and it's not speaking to the 1,000 feet of coming renovation to the building. I guess I'm trying to make that differentiation, because to me, this would be a separate permit if we're talking about the building, but I'll happily talk about the building.
Do we want to let Tom that?
Yeah,
Yes.
Tom, you take it.
Sure. So the NOI is for the alteration associated with the handicap access. But it also includes the fact that we are doing renovations on the building so that we can show that we are not altering the dune system through those alterations.
Thank you. That was the difference of the 300 square feet that is clearly in the top of the permit as it's filed.
Right. Interior to the building is not really jurisdictional. On work on a building, the commission has a right to look and make sure that we're not going to somehow alter the dune outside the building as we work on the building itself. So that's the context of the work on the building within the NOI.
Tom, as long as you're speaking, could you address the any perspectives the town has on elevating the structure and decisions not to do that?
I know that they spend a great deal of time doing the design, and there's probably others on the project team that can address that in more detail, but the existing building profile allows much easier handicap access into the building, a much smaller footprint for the handicap access. The higher the building goes, you know, the more difficult that process is. And I think, you know, what I ought to do is see if somebody else from the project team who's been involved longer. You know, I was involved in this early on and then just brought back in recently. So
yeah, and I also meant, sorry, more relative to the performance standards for the flood zone.
Oh yeah. So in terms of the performance standards, you have to not confuse the fact that we're looking for a variance. We're not looking for a variance from the commission. The commission is not making that decision. That's being made by the BBRS. So, you know, it is something that is very different, and it's not an arbitrary, capricious issue. I mean, I'm not the attorney, and we have one here who can correct me if he hears anything out of bounds. But basically, the BBRS is an administrative procedure that you go through that's built into the building code that allows you to seek relief. And so it's not really a precedent. If somebody has a single family home and it's in the floodplain and they're going to have a residence and have people living in the place and they just don't want to put it up on piles, it's a very different story. They're not going to get very far with the BBRS. The BBRS exemptions are meant for things like public entities trying to provide a public service. They're meant for things like historic homes that maybe don't quite fit the historic exemptions that are already in the code. They're meant for unique situations, not for everybody trying to do a redevelopment. And that variance process, I think we can have Michael, if the commission would like to, Michael and Peter talk a little bit about that for information, but it's not something that's the subject of your decision making.
Yeah. That was I just wanted some clarification on that because it seemed like, well, I think Mr. Manchin has a lot of legitimate issues he's bringing up. They're not necessarily jurisdictional to this process.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll continue. The 95.5 performance standards that you're speaking of, one of the ones that Steve was referring to is the substantial improvement component at 95-3-E. Which is when it's called substantial improvement, costs exceeding 50% of the building value before construction, which is this. So I submit to you that under Concom rulings here, the performance standard there would bring this building under some of their jurisdiction because this is clearly a substantial improvement to come with some unique components, not the least of which are the floodgates, which I believe the Concom should review in its entirety as to a mitigating component to not putting it up on pilings, and that becoming a future precedent setter for, as you've said, the many homes on the island that do also fall under these standards, which wouldn't be allowed for, but yet are being considered to here. I submit to you that our Concom should at least weigh in on why this is a good or not good idea, because if it's not good for a resident such as myself to do, I don't understand why a resident such as myself should fund such a build to fail, many hundreds of $1,000s taxpayer improvement. And so that's what the Concom, by their home rule, is supposed to impose, is what they have authority to do. They have the authority, the additional protection to put their stamp on something if they feel the state hasn't done enough due diligence. And I submit to you further that the burden of proof rests with the town entirely to show them why this is a great idea and it would be a good idea under every circumstance going forward. on the basis of the fact that this is a substantial improvement and falls under their jurisdiction. I think it's worthy of everyone's review, and it would start with every committee that would be involved in a build out such as what a resident would have. The idea that we would try to avert that a taxpayer would have to conform to these standards, but that the taxpaying public doesn't, is a difficult swallow for my pocketbook and for many taxpayers' pocketbooks going forward. And I'm asking, for the home rule effect to be reviewed, and then if there is to be again a moving forward here, that there would be another public hearing where the Concom could retable this to explain to us why this state's ruling is a good idea and that they would fall in line with that because their home rule allows that. And that allows that authority here. If not the substantial improvement clause, and if not the variance clause that would demand that the town file proof that they've exhausted every single other opportunity to provide the same service, which is what Steve was trying to make the point of, because there are other options which would not necessitate all of these mitigating factors and coming proven taxpayer funding for what are clearly seen on and documented are the area flooded. And as Jeff already said not moments ago, that the center island sees the quote unquote most action. To build here is not wise, and I think the Concom needs to take that into consideration for all of us. Again, I thank you for your time and and any other public comment and any comment you may offer in these regards by any of the engineers and or committee members that are here, Planning Peter or Concom and Concom agent alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. To Jack and Steve, just what I'm going to try to do is collect all the public comments so that we can sort of address them as a lump to the extent that we can. Sam, who's next?
So we have Steve back up again. And I know that we have Michael Kennefic with his hand up, and James had his up just a second ago. So we can just bear in mind that we have them. So that's town council and the DPW director.
All right, let's take them. Steve, I'm going to put you at the back of the line just because you had a turn already. All right, so yeah, Sam, turn somebody on.
James, do you want to go ahead? I know you had yours up the longest.
Yeah, I was just going to speak to the propane tank and the oil tank. We've been in, there's no tank in the building, and the propane tank, with the project done, would be removed, and it would go to mini splits, for heat and AC.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks.
and Michael?
Just to I guess clarify, because there had been it's about the process with the BCAB. Not to beat a dead horse, obviously tonight we're examining whether or not there's going to be any impact on any resource areas, and that primarily concerns the deck and the removal of the concrete and the laying down of some stone. Now, there were a couple of comments about why didn't we put up this building on stilts. The BCAB is the open hearing, I believe, about a month ago. We don't have a rescheduled hearing because it's been continued, but there's an existing conditions plan. All these plans are actually been submitted already to the BCAB, and they're going to vote on the very narrow issue of whether or not they're going to allow this building to be converted from a single residence, single family residential use to the public restroom. So just so everybody understands, I know there's been proposals, why didn't we do this? Why don't we lift the building? There's a pending application that the BCAB is going to vote on, and that is the conversion as you see it here, as you see these plans tonight.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
And then before we go back to Steve, just let's double check and make sure
Yep.
there's nobody else.
Yep, we just have Steve right now.
Okay.
Hi, that's my cue. That's a question.
That's your cue.
Yes, it is. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. This is something we're all learning to do again. May I note a comment about what I think is the appeal to the state about getting a variance? I've made some inquiries there and I've already been told that I don't have standing. So that some of the comments that I'm offering to you are not going to be heard by the state because they're saying, oh no, you don't have standing to talk about these issues. That's pretty frustrating. That said, I think that what is before the town is the reality that there has not been an alternative analysis done. The regulations or bylaws for the town require an alternative analysis be done in order to show that this is the only or perhaps best option to pursue. And I would argue that, number one, that analysis has not been presented. But number two, even my cursory analysis looking at the availability of rollaway portable restrooms, which are ADA compliant, is a much better way to go. So we don't spend a lot of money with restrooms, which are then going to be subject to flooding when we have overwash events. In addition, the town has already approved the idea of porta potties down by the Sunset Club, which could be in the flood zone, but could be removed, much as the town porta potties were removed from the center during a recent flood. So my point being that there are definitely workable alternative analysis or alternative options to provide the public good at this site without building a hard structure there. And I think that's a better way to go. But even if we want to debate whether it's a better way to go or not, the town has not done the analysis. I appreciate what the DPW director or public service director said about underground tanks, but my experience is that people aren't always anxious to step up and say, oh yes, I've got an underground tank that was there. I think we need to see some more data, science, if you will, to show that, well, what is the story on that, what OFC cap is all about, which in my experience looks just like a place where people would put in fuel oil when they were providing fuel oil to a system. And I think that's a big unknown until we go inside and look and perhaps ultimately do some test borings. And if we do test borings, we need to have people look at the boring plan to see if it's capable of revealing the issue that we're concerned about. But again,
Steve, can I just ask you to if you have new items, that's awesome, and we would like to hear them. But if you're going to list off the same things that you did previously in your previous comments, it would be helpful if we could just move to letting the proponents address them, because I'm sure they took note of them when you did it originally.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, I was trying to make my comments responsive to what I heard people saying, to what I said. And that was my goal. I may not have achieved my goal. So with that, I would note that we need to, I would argue, either turn this thing down or at least defer it until we get some alternative analysis done. Thank you.
All right. So
Right,
then let's take this to the
we do have
commission.
Tracy up as well.
Oh, here, Tracy, just can you hold that thought for a second? I just want to see if there's if the commission wants to respond, and then if that actually contributes to then what you want to say. I wanted to do the commission and then go back to you guys. Is anybody on the commission, anything on what just happened there? Anybody want to chime in on anything? Going once, going twice. All right, let's take it back to Tracy and the proponents.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure whether or not this is relevant, but with respect to alternatives, we, it's been a long time since the town voted to move forward with the purchase of this property. It goes back to 2017. And in my review of the town meeting minutes, there was a lot of discussion around portable facilities. Should we do it in the center? It was subject to overwash. All of these things were brought up and discussed multiple times at town meeting, along with select board meetings throughout the years since back in 2017. Ultimately, the decision was made by the select board and the town meeting voters to purchase this property. Now we find ourselves in a position where trying to move the initiative forward. I think, respectfully, we've got to concentrate on the issues that are before the commission. Although, these are all great points, we have debated them all in the past on numerous occasions. So this was ultimately the decision that was made to move towards a more permanent seasonal facility. Although those other alternatives are great, this was the choice that the town and the voters made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. All right, Jack, I see your hand. Let's keep it in a forward momentum as opposed to, as Ben was alluding to, circling back.
Absolutely. I'm only speaking directly to Tracy. In addition to the purchase of 350, the voters also turned down this build out at $220,000 at a subsequent town meeting because we directed everyone to go back to the drawing board. But the only drawing board we've come back to is the same plan that was rejected. So I think Steve's got a great point that until it's truly vetted through and through, also a gazebo was approved and denied, and that's what came about from this. So I only say that there is a little bit more history than we bought the building and we need to go forward. The fact we said no to a $220,000 build out, but that was staring virtually the same thing in the face right now, while not asking the voters themselves for that same exact expenditure, should be considered or at least brought to light in light of the comment by Tracy there. Thank you.
Jeff, and everybody else, rehashing all the conversations. Let's keep it jurisdictional and talk about the permit and the project. All those conversations may be well and good, but this isn't the time or place. So if you want to comment on the permit, on the application, by all means. This other stuff, let's leave it somewhere else. That being said, any more public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, Mary, your hand's up. Did you do that on purpose?
I did, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I did do that on purpose. So I missed my turn originally because I was just getting up to speed with everything. But I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. One, I don't think that this project triggers any variance under the Wetland Protection Act. So I'm not sure what the question was about a variance. Two was that in terms of stormwater, if the addition is a deck and ramp, I don't believe that really would trigger stormwater requirements, but in any event, it would be a redevelopment and there's maximum feasible compliance requirements for redevelopment. So maybe the applicant can speak directly to that issue. And then my third point is, it sounds like there's another agency that needs to authorize this work and the change of use. And it seems maybe that the commission can hold off on its decision until we have a decision of whether or not there actually is a feasible project at this point. So those are my comments for now.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary.
Can I ask one question of Tracy, actually? So
Sure.
Is there a plan to go forward with this project if we don't get that variance?
No, we can't move forward without the variance.
So just a question to pose to the commission. similarly to, I believe we did something like this for 156 Boston Road when that septic replacement was in front of the commission. That there was a condition put in stating that no work could be done on the project until we had Board of Health approval, until the applicant had Board of Health approval. So with kind of the understanding that, that was going to be the case anyways, the case with this project is that nothing can be done with this until we get all of the proper approval. So just to, as everyone's saying, to beat the dead horse, add a condition in stating that, nothing can be done to move forward with the project until that variance is approved.
What,
Thanks,
can you,
Tim. I think
can you tell me what the agency is that needs to issue a variance?
If I can address that. So Mary, this, for the work on the structure, not for the access. The cost exceeds 50% of the structure value, and we have a variance application in with the BBRS, and they're the state agency responsible under the building code for issuing exceptions. So, and the building code is, the building permit process is usually after conservation. So that's usually not one that conservation waits for issuance on, but a condition that says, in the event that the variance is denied, that we would have to come back to the commission prior to starting any work with updated plans. Something along those lines, I think would be fine. With regard to stormwater, there's a little bit of a nuance because part of the variance application is converting this from a single family home to another use. So technically it's still a single family home right now, but even if we did trigger, as you noted, we're converting 95 square feet of concrete to stone. We have a 25 square foot area bituminous, and we've got composite deck over PT wood. So essentially, we're not generating any additional new stormwater. So it would be, it wouldn't be much different if you did try to apply stormwater standards to the project. What I would, there's been a lot of issues raised. Some of them have to do with internal town process and town meetings and stuff like that. None of that is really relevant under the performance standards of the Wetland Protection Act and the wetlands bylaw. An alternatives analysis is not called for as far as I can see in the bylaw. An alternatives analysis is sometimes required when we have a significant alteration of a resource area to demonstrate that we have the minimal impact under the Wetland Protection Act. But here, our alteration is within an already heavily altered dune. It's within a landscape bed that's a raised timber landscape bed and within an area of concrete in a sea of development. And Mary, you weren't here for this earlier part of the presentation, but what I was showing is that, this building located here, as you probably know, is surrounded by a sea of pavement, by, dune that is locked in place. The amount of resource area function here is really pretty minimal. And so in no way do I think this triggers any requirement for an alternatives analysis under any of those regulations that apply.
Right.
So,
and I would agree with you, Tom, on the stormwater analysis and the requirement first, because you're reducing impervious area, and in terms of alternatives analysis of no alternative that will result in less impact to dune, and because you're reducing impervious area, I think that performance standard is met. The only one that I'm still not don't seem to have enough information on is, and maybe you've already discussed this, is the 50% rule and whether or not that triggers the building going up on piles.
Yeah. So let me. Yeah. So.
And you went. I don't want you to go through all that again because I know a lot of people have spent a lot of time on this already, and I don't want to drag on the meeting.
Right.
And I'm familiar with that section of the regs. That's just the only open question in my mind. So.
Right. So the nuance there is if we get the variance from the BBRS, then we're in compliance with the building code.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we would comply with that section of the regulations. So,
Hence Samantha's comment about making it a condition of.
right,
only one
right.
condition.
And the alternatives, we don't have any plans for this, but the alternatives, if we were to get rejected, there are other potential uses, either, turning it into a couple single-seater bathrooms. It wouldn't really be ideal. Or something, and there's no plans again for this, but some other municipal use of that structure is going to require ADA access. So it's conceivable, if we were to go down the road, not get a variance, that there could be a plan that would shift, that would not be a substantial improvement to the building, and the ramp is still needed. So we wouldn't want it to not at all be able to go forward. So we'd want a condition that just had us have to come back to the commission in the event the variance was, was not allowed.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like we're getting around to talking this to death. So going back to the commission, is there anybody other than Mary with any new thoughts?
Right, I think that Attorney Kennefic has had his hand up for quite a while, so he may have something to add to this.
All right, I thought that was a leftover hand up.
Well, actually, Tom pretty much spoke to everything that I was going to add. I was just going to say what Tom said. Obviously, I think we've kind of gotten off a little bit here. I mean, we're analyzing whether or not there's an impact to any resource areas posed by this ramp. But the other point I was going to make, as far as waiting on the BCAB hearing, is, as Tom had already said, this is now a town. You need to have a ramp to this building, even if the application is denied for the conversion. If you don't have a ramp in place, you're going to end up having to deal with the Architectural Access Board for handicap accessibility issues. So I would advise against trying to wait for that, because I think this ramp is necessary no matter what ends up happening with this building now that it's owned by the town. I know there's a suggestion about maybe putting some sort of condition there, but I would be hopeful that the board wouldn't, just say, listen, we're going to wait for the BCAB to act. That actually could be another couple of months from now. Because, like I said, you're going to need a ramp to this building no matter what, now that the town owns it. And that's all.
Okay. Thank you, and sorry for mistaking which hand was which there. All right, so back to the commission then. Any new thoughts? Going once, going twice. Okay, and then Sam, I see Steve's hand in the air. Any other public comment?
Yeah, we do have Steve again, and Steve, just to remind you, if it's, if you're gonna make the same comments that have already been made, they've been noted. So as long as it's something new.
And I appreciate that, and I'll do my best, but after the long discussion by the applicant's representative, Tom Hughes, I feel that it's appropriate to respond. Certainly, we need to keep in mind that standing is an issue, and simply saying, well, it's going to go to the BCB, whatever it is, the state, is something that the Conservation Commission needs to consider, since the state has some really tight controls about who has standing to even provide comments. And I would submit that the inability for residents to provide standing is an important consideration. And again, and I apologize that I'm perhaps repeating myself a little bit, but the applicant has not provided an alternative analysis in this application. And as such, it should be given the thumbs down, because they haven't looked at other options which are viable to accomplish the endpoint. And I think the commission needs to take that into account. I think if I say more things, they may be on the edges of repeating of what I've said before, but the lack of alternative analysis is clear. They haven't provided one. And that is something that is required under the town bylaw. And if the town bylaw, never mind what the state says you should do an alternative analysis, and it's not there, then this proposal should be turned down without that alternative analysis. Thank you.
So, Steve, let me pick you up on that. Do you have the section of the bylaw that you're referring to when you are referencing that?
Thank you for the question. I believe I do, and I think I put it in a email that I sent to the commission earlier today. I'm trying to call it up right now on my iPhone because I can't do most, but I believe 95.5 says that the Conservation Commission may grant a variance for the performance standards provided in this bylaw and in any regulations promulgated by the commission to implement the bylaw only when the commission finds that, quote, there are no reasonable alternatives. Excuse me, let me start again. Under 95.1 says there are no reasonable conditions or alternatives that would allow the Man, I'm having trouble reading. I guess I'm getting tired too, Brian, so I appreciate your indulgence.
Steve, hold on a second. Steve, hold on a second. Tom, do you want to go to that section?
Yeah, please, if I can. The section is irrelevant because we don't require a variance from you.
Right.
95.5. Right. So if we were seeking a variance from any section of the sections above, which we're not, we would then need to go through this process. We certainly can demonstrate a public interest. We have mitigating measures, and we would have to go through an alternatives analysis, but we don't have to do that because we're not seeking a variance from the commission. This is only if we seek a variance from the commission.
Okay. Good.
Well,
Perfect.
if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Steve, just hold on, because on section A, right, the first line, right, may grant the variance from the performance standards, right? Right, so that this is specific to granting a variance from the performance standards. All of that 1, 2, and 3 below doesn't apply unless we're doing the variance. And so the variance being discussed is not through us.
If I may, I'm just going with what I'm reading. And that doesn't mean I'm correct, but rather just going with what a citizen says. That my understanding is the Conservation Commission may grant a variance from the performance standard provided in this bylaw and in any regulations promulgated by the commission to implement this bylaw only when the commission finds after conducting a public hearing that there are no reasonable conditions or alternatives that will allow the project to proceed in compliance with the bylaw. And then goes on to make the commission.
Steve, that's absolutely correct. But so again, to jurisdiction, and again to this with this whole project, and I think this is instructive for everybody, is that as a commission, we don't choose what gets brought before us. We don't tell people what to bring before us. We can make suggestions about how they might improve if we feel like they don't meet performance standards. But the town has chosen to bring a project before us. They've asked us to say whether or not the project and the application they brought have any issues, or if we can issue an order of conditions. They're not asking us for a variance. Were they to ask us for a variance, then everything you're saying we would have to apply. But they're not asking for that variance, and they're showing us reasonable evidence about why they do not need the variance. Right. So this section, which you're reading from, which is absolutely correct, just doesn't apply here.
And I appreciate that, but as a public commenter, and again, I haven't done the deep analysis, but it seems to me they should be asking, the town, that is, should be asking for a variance. And in any event, I'm saying as a member of the public and a commenter that the request for a variance is appropriate. And that because the town hasn't asked for one is perhaps a all too clever way to avoid having the commission having the ability to weigh in as you described. And I'm saying, no, they need to ask for a variance, number one. And then in doing so, let's look at what your own bylaws or our own bylaws, because I'm a citizen of the town, what do our bylaws require? And they have not provided an alternative analysis as I think we anticipate that they should do. And by not asking for one, that is not a way to duck the responsibilities of the town. Now, that's my perspective, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I need to voice my concern about this. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. And Jack, sorry for interrupting you earlier. I didn't realize that you were still going.
I'll Ben, everything. I want to congratulate and thank the Concom for conducting open Zoom meetings and entertaining public comment directly. I think this is the basis of forwarding anything and every issue. And I appreciate everybody's ear and time here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So then, apparently we've got a standing disagreement with Steve in terms of how to read the bylaw, and so we'll just sort of leave that one standing. What does the commission want to do?
I think we can do it around the horn, but I don't see any, personally don't see any issues outstanding with this project right now.
Okay. Dan?
Is that Sam or Dan?
Dan.
I did it. Skip my alphabet.
Going to Brad or what?
Yeah, let's do Brad. I need to work on my alphabet, but.
All good, Brian.
Okay. All right, now Dan.
Yeah, I think, I don't really have any detailed problems here with the whole proposal, but, I do sort of think it might be worth having a condition that the proper authorities, is it BCAB, BBRS, I don't know what it is, but just conditional on them issuing the a variance to the building code substantial improvement question.
Okay. Peter, Mary?
I'm all set.
Mr. Chairman, could I suggest that a condition that required that the project could not go forward unless it obtains a building permit would be a suitable condition, because if we either get a variance from the BBRS to make that happen, or we change the project so it's not a substantial improvement. But as town council said, we're going to need a ramp on this building unless it's torn down and rebuilt. So I think either way, obviously, if we change something that changes the alteration, we have to come back to you with a minor change or an amendment, depending on what we do. But I think if you just condition on the issuance of a building permit, is my understanding, and Peter's here, we can confirm with him, he cannot issue a building permit for this application for the renovations to the structure until the BBRS has issued that decision. So if we don't get the variance, he doesn't issue a building permit for this project as currently proposed.
And Tom, I think we also need to hear that he doesn't issue a building permit if it triggers the 50% rule.
Right, unless we get that issuance.
Correct. Yeah, no, I'm just
right. So I think Peter, can you just clarify that you can't issue a building permit without that variance? Is that correct? Is Peter still here?
He is, but he's muted.
Give him a second. He'll get it.
Okay.
Can you
There
hear
you
me
go.
now?
Yep.
I'm a newbie to Zoom, so you have to forgive me. No, I absolutely can't issue any permit without that variance for the project as presented.
And
Okay.
if a different, if a different project was presented that went over 50% improvement costs, could you approve it without a variance?
No, I could not.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make that very clear for everybody.
Yeah.
So again, Mr. Chairman, I think I would reiterate that linking the condition to the issuance of a building permit is probably the logical and best way to do it, to still give the town a little bit of flexibility if they find a way to redesign to come under substantial improvement in the event of a denial from the BBR.
Okay. That sounds fine. All right, so then at this point, it sounds like we're ready for a motion on what to do. Is that right? Does that sound appropriate? Go, Ben.
I'll move to issue an order of conditions with the standard conditions for Plum Island work, as well as the additional condition that this work cannot go forward without an approved building permit.
All right. Second, anybody?
Second,
Okay. Roll call. Benjamin,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Daniel,
yes,
Mary,
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
Okay, I'm also going to vote in the affirmative. And so that is that.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everybody. Moving right along. Our next item, we have Cricket Lane LLC, 55 Christian Drive, DEP 050-1355. The continued NOI to construct 24 single-family homes with 800 feet of roadway, common septic, water, sewer, and stormwater management. Roadway includes a limited crossing, wetland filling, and replacement with work in the buffer zone. This is continued from 9/21, and Sam, I believe you said this is going to be continued again.
Yes, I did receive a request to continue from Attorney DeShane, pending the review from Ann Martin. So they requested to continue to the 11/2 meeting, November 2nd.
Okay.
And I just, for commission members, there's been several new files that we've received that have been placed in the folder. So before the next meeting, people should go in there and get familiar with those.
Yeah. Yeah, and Sam, I believe you sent those new files on to Ann to include in her review, right?
Yes, I did. She did send me, actually, the email that she sent me is irrelevant, so never mind. But yeah, she does have them. She does have the new stuff from the abutters.
Cool. Excellent. Then I'm blanking. Do we need to vote?
I will
to
move
accept the
to,
continued-
I'll move to continue this hearing to November 2nd at 7 p.m. on Zoom.
So moved.
Is that an election day?
It is.
It is actually, I discussed this with someone today. It's an election day, but it's a local election. Newbury is not involved, so it doesn't have anything to do with us.
Good, thanks.
It's government day. All right, well then, let's roll call. That's the first and the second. Benjamin,
Yes.
Bradley,
Aye.
Daniel,
yes,
Mary,
Abstain.
and Peter.
Yes.
All right, I'm also going to vote in the affirmative. So, moving along, we have Emily Corbato at 5 Melody Lane, an RDA to install an 18 kilowatt standby generator anchored to a concrete base. All right, so who's,
I actually spoke with Ms. Gravato today, and the representative from Moral Electric is unable to make it, and she was not comfortable doing the presentation herself. So she requested a continuance until the 11/2 meeting as well.
I will move to continue this hearing until November 2nd at 7 p.m.
So moved.
okay, roll call, Benjamin,
Aye.
Aye.
Bradley,
Aye.
yes,
Daniel, Mary,
Yes.
and Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. Okay, next thing we have up, DeRosa Environmental Consulting, Inc., Parker River Research Station, an RDA to install a single temporary research station for academic purposes within the salt marsh along the Parker River. All right, and it looks like I see Evan there.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Evan Gavendran from DeRosa Environmental. I'm here representing Inca Forbridge from Marine Biological Laboratories for the proposed placement of a single temporary research station in the salt marsh by the Parker River. We're seeking a negative determination of applicability. And I will share my screen. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. So the location of the proposed research station is known as map 16-7, lot 26A. And it's town-owned land. So we're simultaneously seeking select board approval. And that hearing is held on the 26th. Both the Conservation Commission and the select board approved this pretty much same project back in 2016. In brief, the purpose of the project is for scientific research in order to measure carbon dioxide exchange and methane emissions within the atmosphere of the salt marsh. The results of the research aim to inform future management efforts to protect ecosystem services provided by tidal wetland ecosystems, including carbon sequestration, storm protection, and water quality improvement. The research station will sit upon a small wooden platform placed 4 feet above the salt marsh. The research station is temporary and will be present in the salt marsh for the duration of the study. The surveys are expected to occur for 5 years, and the tower must be placed 65 to 160 feet into the salt marsh in order to measure the air coming directly from the ecosystem and not from the Parker River. The research station will be accessed by a motorboat down the Parker River, and a temporary boardwalk will be installed to limit the disturbance to the salt marsh from walking from the boat to the 65 to 160 feet where the research station will be placed. The research station will be, oh, I just read that. The equipment is proposed to remain year-round and will be supported by 4x4 wooden planks to protect the equipment from the ice. And it's our professional opinion that the research station will have no adverse impact and will not remove, build, dredge, or alter the wetland resource areas. Questions?
Great. Thank you. Ben, why don't you get started?
Yeah, Evan, this is obviously a great thing to be doing and will help with understanding how the ecosystem functions and hopefully preserving salt marshes and moving to the future. It keeps on saying temporary, but I can't find a timeline for just what temporary means.
5 years.
5 years.
The duration of the study, yeah.
Okay, so quasi-temporary.
Okay.
All right. All right, I'm gonna think about this for half a second, but you can move on.
Okay, Bradley?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Daniel?
I wonder if there are any details on the boardwalk structure, elevation, width, that sort of thing. If that could possibly be significant in terms of salt marsh production.
Yeah, so this is a picture of what has been used in the past. I don't think they have anything specific. It's just to get from the boat to the research station. So if anything, I'm sure they would just do plank and sleeper, or I don't know, something similar to this picture, this image.
I mean, I would just, submit that this is there for 5 years. That's whatever is there is going to have an impact if it's not moved around from time to time to expose different areas of the salt marsh. I think it's something we really need to look at. I haven't made my mind up about it yet, but.
Sure, and I'm sure the applicant would move it if necessary year after year. to minimize the impact as well.
I mean,
If you want to condition that.
other applications now are, 1.5 to 1 on height above versus width.
Sure. So I'm sure that the applicant will adhere to those if you want to condition that. I'm sure it will only be, 2 feet wide. It's just for walking purposes to get to the station.
Okay, Dan, you good?
I'm, I'm good, but maybe some questions aren't really, we don't have enough detail is my take.
Okay. Mary?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think this is, most likely a wonderful project and we want to support it. I just having a hard time with this as an RDA. It seems like there's quite a lot of activity on the salt marsh and with potential for at least temporary impacts. And so I'm having a little bit of trouble with that. And also, I guess we just need to have more information on construction methods and piles and how this platform, what material is being used for piles and how it's going to be driven and whether or not the project is going to be resilient to, flooding and storm ice damage and whatnot. If it's just temporary structure, that can you answer some of those things for me, Evan?
So in 2016, the commission approved an RDA for this similar thing. I can certainly get more information on how the station will be placed in the marsh. I'd have to get that from the scientist. Oops, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I mean, I just think that there's enough involved that this should be a notice of intent. Unfortunately, that's my comment. I think there's a lot of questions and we have a limited ability to condition projects for an RDA and limited ability to sort of enforce and monitor them, especially in a location that we can't get access to without a boat. So I think there's going to have to be a lot of conditions to make sure that this is done. I know that, I'm sure the scientists that are doing this don't want to do any damage to the marsh, but we need to keep in mind that we don't know who the contractor will be to install this, and we want to make sure we give them plenty of guidance to do this in a way that doesn't damage the marsh during construction or during maintenance activities or during dismantling of it. So those are my thoughts.
In the past, for similar research stations, the Marine Biological Laboratories also agreed to seasonal placement. So instead of remaining year round, they would take it out before the winter. So if the commission
maybe you could check on that,
prefer that and issue a negative determination for just a seasonal placement, I think they would prefer that over having to do the whole notice of intent application.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you good, Mary?
I'm good for now, thank you.
Okay, Peter?
Yep, I think, the project seems very noteworthy, and I think everyone in the commission appreciates that. I think the concerns are the effects that it's going to have long-term. You are talking 5 years, and I think more information is needed for the commission to really adjust this. And I think maybe even though the applicant doesn't want to do a notice of intent, it might be the best method to approach this. At least my thoughts as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I think my comment, besides seconding everybody else's general support and general worry, if you could acquire some photos or otherwise of the site that did go through with the RDA, so that we could see, what impact did happen and the amount of time that was out there and, presumably was taken out, you know, arguably it's still not out there.
Sure.
You know, and to give it some context over, you know, how the previous project ended up working out, and if it really ended up being an RDA project, or, you know, to everybody else's points of it, you know, might be better off as an NOI.
Okay.
So I actually, I believe included in this application, when I was reviewing it, I believe the original negative determination was included. Evan, is that?
Yes.
Do you remember that correctly? Were there any conditions included in this, do you know? I think they might have been up a little bit farther. They're kind of hidden in there a little bit. They're not quite as
okay.
as I think they might.
Looks like it was just a -3.
Yeah.
So I guess yeah, the big question is, was there any study following the previous project about what impact it ended up having?
I don't know. I wasn't working for DeRosa Environmental back in 2016, but I can definitely find out for you guys and present that at the next hearing if you'd like.
And was the original project, do you know, did that go on for the same amount of time? Was it the same time frame?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can just
Yeah,
suggest,
because if that's a 5-year project, isn't it still out there in theory?
It's
Or
not
re-
out
or-
there.
Or recently removed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think-
so at least the footprint is fresh on that thing.
I would say that it sounds like we have a pretty clear list of concerns and things that the applicant needs to address between now and the next meeting. So I'd ask Evan, do you think that this is a 2-week process for you or a 4-week process?
Yeah, I think we can get this for you for the next meeting on 11/2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
unless there's,
And as it sounds like you're going to that. So Ben, are you making a motion to continue?
I was going to offer, since I kind of snuck that in there, I was going to offer if there's any other commission member who wanted to say something before I did a motion.
Well, I think we should resolve whether or not we are going to direct them to do a notice of intent, because I would hate to have 2 weeks wasted and come back with an RDA and have us decide, no, I think we really want to have this be a notice of intent. So if everyone can weigh in on that, I think that would be helpful.
I personally, if they are going to make it a truly temporary deployment where it is not out year round, I am all right with an RDA. If it's going to be, they want to have it in the marsh year round, I agree it should be an NOI. That's where I stand on this. But Brad, how do you feel?
Exactly as you do, Ben, and based on the comments from other commission members, I now have some questions about how that superstructure that holds that 6-meter tower is actually going to be stabilized. Are there additional guy wires on it?
Yeah. Yeah, there are.
And are those guy wires then helicoiled into the marsh? I find it difficult to believe that they're going to pound piles into the mud to support a structure that is just as it looks. Now that you've blown it up, I can see the guy wires.
Yeah.
They're going to support a structure that has equipment on there that has to weigh in the dozens of pounds, if not the hundreds of pounds. So long-winded, Ben, I agree with you.
And I think if we just add that to the list of structural details and plan details that we need to see.
And I'd also echo Mary's comments that this sounds to me like this is bigger than a bread box.
All right. I mean, Evan, do you know if they are in any kind of time pressure where, you know, they might want to try to convince us this is an RDA, and then if we disagree that we'll do the NOI later, or are they under, you know, some kind of funding calendar?
No rush. It's not going to be installed until next year. So we have all winter to get through permitting, but I think I'd like to continue as an RDA for now, just so I can see if it's more important for her to keep it year round and do the whole NOI, or if she'd prefer to just take it out and deal with it seasonally.
Okay. So then,
Mary.
you know, Mary, you okay with that? Waiting to see what they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly leaning towards a notice of intent. I think, you know, putting it up and taking it down every year for 5 years has its own set of impacts as well. So I just don't think we can properly condition it with an RDA. That's where I come down on it. So obviously it's up to them to decide which way they want to do it, but we can continue the discussion on the RDA to the next meeting. I just wanted to throw it out there that that's the way I'm leaning, so they can bear that in mind in their decision making.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful. All right, well then, Ben, I think you made a motion. Is there a motion on the floor to continue this RDA?
Sorry, just 1 second.
yeah.
I know Jack did have his hand up. I just wanted to make sure that if he had something to say that he got addressed.
Hey, no, thanks, Sam, for noticing that. I was just curious. I didn't catch the first frame. Is this salt marsh the outer reaches of the Great Meadow along the Parker? Is that where the station's going up? I've seen a similar one out on Stackyard when I go up by Nelson's Island. When you walk out that part of Rowley, there's one out there.
Yeah, there is one in Rowley. Exactly. Yep. So it's going to be pretty much the same thing out here. So here's Triton Regional High School. So it's just behind there on the Parker.
So that's actually part of the Great Meadow Farm for all that we have from Orchard Street. So that's a walk across it's a wonderful walk. I've done it many times, and I'll look forward to how it goes up. I'm out there often. It's a wonderful asset that's very underutilized in town. It's beautiful out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. All right, did I miss anybody else? I wasn't expecting any public comment on this one.
Nope, everybody else I just saw his hand up. I wanted to make sure that he, but I didn't see anyone else.
I would have if I could have clapped raise hands for me, Sam, I would have done that. That was awesome. Thanks for seeing that. You're great.
All right, so then back to continuing this.
I'll move to continue this till November 2nd at 7 p.m.
Thank you, Ben. All right, thank you. Roll call, Ben.
Yes.
Brad.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Mary.
Sorry, yes.
And Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Evan. Good night. All right. Moving along, we have Gerald Tendetti at 7 Hutchins. We don't have a DEP number yet. And this is an NOI to replace an existing single-family home with a new home elevated on piling.
Good evening. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting. Gerald Fendetti's with me here tonight. Gerald and Charlotte have been looking for a place on Plum Island where they've lived for years. They've been looking for a place where they could build something that would be much more sort of handicap accessible for themselves, which means lower to the ground with a lot of first floor living. Mobility is becoming more and more impaired. So they have purchased the property at 7 Hutchins. And if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to share the screen. So let me just, you go to the next presentation. Okay, so it's, sorry, it's not that lot. All right, so this is the location right here. This is the lot. So it's currently developed with a home with a foundation. It's got driveway, yard, lawn back here. It's got a series of raised bed planters back here that are a vegetable garden. And then there's sort of this nicely vegetated wooded area in the back. There's also a little bit of a wooded area and a nicely vegetated in terms of dune grass, et cetera, area over here with some sparse sand areas within it. Mainly, the proposal is to build within this area here that's already developed. The property is within the AE 13. It is up on a knoll, so it just approaches the elevation of the flood. This just kind of gives you a broader idea that we're not within the limit of moderate wave action. So this is the existing house. Again, you can kind of see the driveway that kind of comes in here, goes on the other side a little bit. Lawn area back here, and there are planters over behind these few trees here. And another view from the south. Again, you can kind of see how the bifurcated driveway in front and on the side, lawn areas, there's a shed back here, and then the garden. And again, sort of fairly nicely vegetated with some sand areas off to the left, and then a little bit of sand area back here, but mostly wooded on the other part of the lot. So here's a proposal, which is to basically replace this existing structure with a new structure as shown. The impacts are within areas that are either driveway or lawn. The lawn area is routinely mowed. It has a short root system. It doesn't have any height. It really isn't performing any dune function. There are some nice areas that are contributing to dune function on site that are off to the side and behind the structure. We've given you numbers to kind of show you that in terms of vegetation that is contributing to dune function, we do have an increase because we're getting rid of a lot of lawn and putting down some American beach grass. So we do have a net increase. The elevations of the structure, because this is kind of up on a knoll, it's really just a couple feet above grade. It does have the 2-foot clear underneath. Proposed 3.5-foot utility chase in there. And then we provided you with a profile that shows that we do have the 2 feet clear. AE 13 is right here, and the grade is just skirting around 12. So we're pretty close to the flood. So by getting our 2 feet clear, we are compliant with the building codes and the FEMA requirements for the first floor elevation here. So what makes this work really well for Jerry and Charlotte is the fact that they can just get in here with a couple steps, and down the road, if they had to, they could modify this by putting in a ramp and easily get into the structure. Currently, they've had a house with an elevator, and it just is too much in terms of being able to live. And I know that they really do want to retire, on Plum Island. They've been there a long time. They've been on Fordham Way, on Southern, and I think a few other places. But anyhow, so with that, it's a pretty straightforward project. We do not have a DEP file number. It's listed, but it is waiting for fee to clear revenue. And I tried to reach out to them today and was unable to reach anybody to see if they could check, because I believe by now the fee should have cleared. But I'm confident we'll have a file number for the next hearing. What I'd like to do is just see if you have any questions or comments, anything we can go through with you, and then look to continue for a closeout at the next meeting, I believe. And Jerry, what do you know what the date you're on zoning is? And you have to unmute.
Yeah.
All right, Jerry, if you can just text me.
Oh, yeah. Can you
Oh,
hear me
there
now?
you go. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, November 18th is the hearing.
Okay, and your next hearing's the 6th. No,
Second.
you actually, you have the 2nd. So we may have to continue. It's probably wise that we continue past the zoning hearing. But if we have issues that we need to address with the commission, then we would want to continue to before that, so we can at least make sure all the issues are sort of put to rest with you, and then just continue for issuance, just to make sure zoning doesn't make any changes. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the commission to get any questions.
Okay. I'm gonna go in reverse order this time, just to give Ben a break. Peter.
You know, I'm just looking at the plans now. So the current structure is 1,100 feet. Is that what I see, Tom? And then it's going to be going to 2937. Is that right? Am I reading that
It's
right?
yeah. So if you look at the building, the current building is 1145, and the proposed building is 2937, and that's, you know, that's the drawback of having a building that is going to be designed for sort of single floor living, is it does have to be a lot bigger. But you know, these guys, I think, are really, and I've been working with them on a few other sites. They've looked at Plum Island, other sites, to be able to do something like this. And this site was big enough that it has the zoning space and the FAR and everything to be able, you know, because of the triple lot, essentially, we're able to do it. And the area of current encroachment in the dune with the existing home and the yard and the vegetable gardens and the shed and all that. But yes, it is a big increase in building footprint.
And so the original total disturbed was 5161, and the proposed disturb will be a little under 4,000. Is that right?
Right. And by disturbed, we're including, you know, the lawn areas that are grass that are not really contributing to dune function as vegetation. But we are increasing native vegetation, so there will be an increase in function, even with the loss of the lawn.
Gotcha. Okay. You probably have some more drawings for us at our next meeting, I would think, right?
Well, what other drawings would you like?
So we have the dune, let's see, we're at 12 until we have 2 feet of clearance. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got 2 feet of clearance. You can see here, this is a profile up through the bottom of the structure. So
you're gonna have propane and all that sort of stuff. So you'll have that, you know, indicated so that the commission understands that and appreciates that.
right. Okay, we can make sure we show
All that sort of stuff.
yeah, show the propane and any other details. I guess in terms of dumpster, that would end up in the driveway for the demo part and for the construction.
I guess whatever you have that additional that we would think would be helpful.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Mary?
Thanks. This looks pretty good so far as I can tell. I just had a question about the clearing that's needed. Do you need to cut any shrubs or trees to construct this? It looks like there's some bushes in the building footprint. I'm just wondering how much additional clearing you're proposing and whether you have a planting plan for mitigation.
So there are, well, for mitigation, I'll go over on the plan. We show some plantings. We can add some woody stuff, but there are literally things coming out of the foundation.
Yeah.
There's a tree right here.
Yep.
This, right. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think if somebody were to continue to live here, they probably could come in with an RDA just to remove those, because they're harmful to the house.
Yeah.
I think we're going to be tight with these here, so those would end up going. And then they've got some low stuff back in this area that I think would be impacted. But overall, I mean, basically you can see, if you see where the shed is, you see
that
where these
moving?
things are. No, so if we go, let's go back to the site plan. Let me bring it back to full page. Okay, so you can see the shed right here. So we're just in front, and you can see that within the footprint, we've located the stuff that's right nearby. So I think that these four are probably reasonably, they're gonna go. We're gonna have to impact this. So I can approximate the number, and we can propose a similar number of woody plants that we could plant off on the side within the sparse area.
Yep, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then, do you have architectural drawings yet? Any renderings?
We do, and I can provide them. Generally, all we do on Concom, sometimes our Concom profile is those, but generally we just provide up to the first floor. But if the commission would like, I can get those. We've got them as part of the zoning filing, and Jerry is actually an architect. He's designed the home, and he's designed his prior home.
Okay.
So we can submit that if you want to see it.
Yep, no, that would be great if you have them. And I see you got steel piles, and I just maybe add a note to this profile that it would remain open underneath.
Yep.
We're not going to add anything there.
Yep. Yeah, we can certainly do that.
That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Daniel?
Yeah, this looks like a very workable plan. I think some architectural drawings, as mentioned, would help confirm that there's no, not gonna be any attempt to block off the 2-foot clear space with anything. It would help to show where the stairways touch down, that sort of thing. I'm kind of curious how the garage works, because clearly it's not tall enough to drive in underneath. So, but that's just a matter of curiosity for me. But kind of a better visualization of any other touchdowns.
Yep.
Here's that sort of thing.
Right. So propane tanks, condensers, bottom of stairs, that type of thing. Yeah, we can provide that level of detail. There's an existing propane tank here, but obviously that goes. But I'll work out all those details with Jerry. We'll get that updated. What I think what we ought to do then is, why don't we continue this to your next meeting, and let's give you all the details that you need and make sure that everybody's satisfied, and then we'd continue to the meeting after the zoning hearing, just for a closeout, if that works with the commission.
Yeah, I'm sure that is sensible, Tom, but let's finish getting through the questions.
Right.
You're jumping
Okay.
the gun a little bit.
Yeah.
So Dan, are you good?
I'm happy.
Okay. Brad?
All the concerns that I had were included in the questions that have already been proposed.
Okay. Benjamin?
Any plans for an outdoor shower?
Gerald?
No,
Oh, no.
no show.
No.
Okay, that would have been answered by the architectural plan, but we could have nipped it early. But thank you. Otherwise, everybody else covered my questions.
Okay.
All right. So then my only comment that wasn't covered already just sort of gets to Mary's point a little bit. What's the species composition out there? Is it mostly native, mostly invasive, mostly, old garden plants? I mean,
No, it's actually pretty nice. It's mostly Native American beach grass, some other sort of herbs and forbs mixed in there, but and then a lot of red cedar and a few other things. But no, it's not riddled with invasives. I don't recall saying things like black locust, like the types of things we had on that Southern Boulevard site. I don't see that here. It is actually pretty nice. And what we'll do, and oh, there's definitely beach plum too, because I ate a few while I walked around doing my site work. Yeah. So I will work with Jerry to come up with, say a dozen or so woody plants and a place to plant them. And then I'm just making a list right here. So if we can just make sure I've got everything right with the commission. Last I checked, by the way, the Sox were up 2-1. So.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so we want the dumpster location. And then add woody plants to planting plan to mitigate. Was there anything I'm missing from that list?
The architectural plans?
Yeah, can you see? So add architecturals, add note to remain open, propane, condensers, stair details, dumpster location, woody plants, and I assume, and I'll work with Jerry if he's gonna have a generator or anything like that, we'll show those locations on the plan.
Hey, Tom, you might want to talk about just landscaping more broadly and generally and loop it in. Like, I don't know, the driveway in your area looked, like the kind of thing that you guys, this might come up later, that they might want to change the driveway surface.
Yeah.
Like if you want to sort of, loop a few other things into this while we're talking about it.
Right. So in terms of, we're proposing this to be a gravel driveway.
Oh, sorry, I totally missed that. Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures instead of the plan.
Right. So currently it's gravel. It's got in some places some wispy long grass has kind of worked its way into it, but it's gravel and vehicles park up there and have for a long time. So
your profile says clamshell, so they can match.
Okay, so there we go. Let's go to the next page to my list. And we will maybe make it say clamshell or gravel, but we will make material okay. I just don't want to forget all this stuff. Make sure I've got a complete list. Does that work?
Like, yeah, back to that point though, just sort of what's future tense. And again, I'm looking at the pictures. Sorry if this is on the plan.
Yeah.
Is the path out to the shed in the back? Is there going to be a path? Because you said
probably, probably no more than what's there now, but show path if any. All right, yeah. We'll resolve all those things. We'll look more kind of at the areas outside the house, and I'll work with these guys to make sure that everything is detailed enough that we can get through. And if we have to make adjustments to landscape later, we can come in with a minor. People often have a lot of trouble thinking about landscape when you're spending so much time like focusing on the house itself. So we'll work on that.
All right, cool.
All right.
So in that case, who would like to make a motion that's not Ben? Let's give you somebody else a chance, Ben. Any volunteers?
Continue to the next meeting.
Actually, are we continuing to the December meeting?
To the next meeting, I want to make sure that our plans meet every need of the commission, and then we'll continue to the December meeting after the next one.
So I would second Peter's motion then.
All right, we have a first and second roll call. Benjamin? Thumbs up. Okay. Brad?
Yes.
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
and I will also vote yes.
Thank you. Did I also
Okay,
hear a
great.
cat vote in there?
Yeah, that's mine.
I think you
Sorry.
did, yeah.
So we got an extra, we got an extra vote. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Yes, thanks.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.
All right, take
And
care.
it looks like our last
Did they see us?
major item of the evening coming up. Michael Kirkpatrick at 8 12th Street, DEP 050-1369. The continued NOI to construct a 9x15 shed on piling. Continued from the 10-5 meeting.
So is Tom on this one too?
So I don't believe, and unless Leslie or Bob are here for this, I don't believe Mr. Kirkpatrick is here. I actually spoke to him earlier. He is going to need ZBA approval for that because he does go over the lot coverage. The lot coverage is already at 28% and it's going up to 30. We also received some correspondence from DEP, and they are requiring, or they're requesting some additional site plans that show where the shed is actually going to go on the property, which there isn't really anything that shows that right now. He also needs to close the old order of conditions. He needs the as-built done for that. And he's gonna need a denial letter from the building commissioner in order to go to DEP, or sorry, to go to the ZBA. And I also have to issue him a letter so that he can go to the ZBA. My recommendation would be to, and this was after discussing this with the planning director, would be to vote to continue his hearing indefinitely. And I did speak to him about this and he did agree to that, to continue his hearing indefinitely, pending his ZBA approval and getting everything else done. And he did agree to that today.
So, Mary, you probably have the most experience with this, but I seem to remember council telling us at some point that we need to continue to a time and date certain. And so
Yeah, you do,
indefinite
or
won't
he'll-
work. We could opt out.
He may have to re-notify butters and re-advertise the hearing. So, and he will have to if we don't set a date.
Okay.
So we can keep it on the agenda. We can put it on an agenda item in December or something like that, far enough away, and then take it up again, or we can
Yeah, I think
close it out.
if by some miracle he's able to meet the ZBA deadline of, I believe it's November 4th, to get onto their December 16th, I think, meeting. He's not going to be able to get in until then. If you wanted to vote to continue it to the first meeting in December, which off the top of my head, I don't know what day that is. Just
Well,
so that
let's continue it to the first meeting in January after the ZBA.
in January. I don't know which
Do
one.
we even know when that? Are you calendared that far out yet, Sam?
If we stay on schedule, it's January 11th.
No, the first meeting in January.
If we do every 2 weeks, it's January 11th.
So we're doing the first and third Tuesdays.
All right, my fault. There we go.
So it would be the 4th.
And I would suggest that we should work to not have to do 2 meetings and make that an exception rather than a rule. I'm not going to speak for Peter, but I think this was originally a monthly meeting. And I was one of the people that said, hey, why are we going till 11 o'clock? Well, very rapidly, we're heading towards 10 o'clock on every other week. So I think we need to work to consolidate these so that these don't become another full-time job for all of us.
Seconded.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Ah, man. No, never mind. I'm gonna be quiet.
I just like soggy. I mean,
Well-
I don't know what to do. I see that name and I just want to do something.
So
Well-
we have a motion, do we have a motion to continue to January 4th?
Now I do.
I think
I'll
Brad-
second it.
May I make a motion?
Yeah, I second that, Mary.
Thank you.
All right, roll call. Benjamin,
Yep.
Brad,
I,
Dan, Mary,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. All right, we're coming up on the home stretch here. 7th inning stretch, although maybe not yet. The Anthony Barburis Certificate of Compliance, 5 Perkins Way, DEP 050-1192. Completed wetland replication. Oh, Sam, what's up with this one?
So I actually had a conflict of interest with this. So Mary was doing the inspection for it, and I spoke with Patrick Seacamp, who is the consultant for this, or the wetland scientist, and I believe there was a scheduling struggle with that, with Mary being able to get out there, so that has not been.
Yeah,
done yet. So
we weren't able to coordinate schedules, so
we're tabling that one for now.
we're tabling it to the next meeting, yes.
Okay.
It's not a public hearing, we don't need to do anything further. Okay.
So the next one is Catherine O'Brien at 182-50-1362. A request for a COC for completed septic replacement.
Yep, and I
Report.
did, I got all of the paperwork for that. I got the as-built plan. I went out and did an inspection, and that one is all set. And I would recommend the issuance of a complete COC.
All right. Anybody like to take her up on that?
So
I make
moved.
a second it.
The first and second. Okay. Roll call.
Wait,
Then-
who had the motion?
Dan moved, Brad
Dan?
seconded.
It's neck and neck.
Yes.
Thank you. Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
I will also vote yes. All right. Next thing, no extensions, no emergency, no enforcement order, Mr. Gray. Yes, Nathan Gray at 21 Cottage Road. Tell us about this, Sam.
So at the last meeting, there was an agreement to have me send a letter out notifying Mr. Gray that if we didn't receive any correspondence with him regarding a schedule for compliance with the enforcement order, that it was going to get sent out to DEP, and DEP was going to take over the role of enforcement for that. I did end up getting a call from him over the long weekend. I spoke with him last Tuesday. And essentially what he told me was that there was an agreement at a meeting at some point, and I confirmed this with Mary, that there was an agreement that the wood chips that are out there didn't need to be removed from the property so long as they aren't impeding the germination and growth of the reseeding that was supposed to have been done. He also told me that apparently the same day, which I believe was September 21st, was the first time I went out there to do an inspection. The same day he did the wetland seeding for the restoration project. And that was, I believe, overseen by Bill Manuel. I instructed Nathan that essentially that we needed to get proof. We needed to get something from Bill Manuel, a letter from him stating that, yes, the seeding has been done, it was done properly, that he has confidence in it, that he's monitoring it, and then either to receive a summary report from him, or considering it might be a little bit too early, to at least get some sort of potential timeline for when we would get the summary report. I didn't hear from them all week. I sent out an email today and received an automatic reply from Bill Manuel saying that he would be out of office until Monday. So the ball is rolling on that. There have just been a few speed bumps here and there.
Sam, I thought you had said that some of the structures hadn't been removed.
Nope, all of the structures have been removed. The only thing that hadn't been removed was the wood chips, but
Okay.
I did let him know that based on my conversation with you, that as long as we can get something, from Bill Manuel stating if he believes that the wood chips won't have any impact, and that it is being monitored, that the germination and the seeding is being, and the growth is being monitored to ensure that the wood chips aren't having any negative impact on that, that we would accept the, not having to remove them.
Oh, yeah, I'll swing by and take a look at it. But I would think based on that information, we don't necessarily have to follow up with DEP yet, and you can keep working with it. Okay.
Yeah, and I am planning on trying to follow up with Bill on Monday, hopefully, or hearing from him on Monday at the very least. If I don't hear from him by Tuesday, I'm going to give him a call and
Keep pestering him, yeah.
yes, very good at that.
Mhm.
Okay, so then it sounds like we're gonna be patient and wait this one out.
Yes.
Anybody want to take a point opposed to Mary's or Sam's? Okay. So that sounds like a plan. And so finally, in our other business category, we need to vote to appoint a member of the commission to be responsible for signing payroll and bills payable / invoice. So Ben and I are familiar with this story, but Sam, why don't you give everybody else the dime store version?
So I realize it does sound a little bit strange. I spoke with Eileen, who is the head of finance at the town hall, and essentially they found out that any town employee who operates under a board, committee, commission, if your payroll, if your salary comes out of that board or commission's budget, then someone from that board has to sign your payroll. So someone has to be available to sign my timesheets every other week. So it's every other Monday starting next week, I believe, would be the first one. And that's because my salary comes out of the Conservation Commission budget. And then we also have to have someone who would be responsible for signing the bills payable and invoices. So like if we make a purchase from Staples out of the commission budget, someone would have to be responsible for signing that invoice and approving it.
Can this be done electronically?
Yes.
It could be, yes. Yeah, so
Yes.
And isn't this normally done by the treasurer of the board or secretary?
I suppose it
Treasurer or
would
secretary?
typically be, do we have those positions assigned?
No, we don't have, no.
So
Because,
when I spoke with Eileen about this, we don't even need to really hold a vote, as long as someone is willing to be available at least once a week, as needed, at least once a week or as needed, at like an absolute bare minimum every other week to sign the payroll. And the payroll is just for me. It does not include Chrissy. Chrissy's payroll comes out of the inspectional services budget. So Peter actually signs that. Peter Burnett signs that for her.
So Sam, what we do for planning is Martha just submits it to the chairperson. I'm the chairperson. I can do it electronically, so I can do it on this thing. It can be done instantaneously, and then we do that for all of our vouchers too. So it's easy, doesn't require someone to physically go there. And so it's not a lot of heavy lifting. So, for planning, we just have the chairperson do it. That way it's clean, because the chairperson, has to be the person of record for other stuff. But, Brian, it's easy to do. It's just, as long as you know how to sign on your phone, once you do it once, it's easy, and you can do it anywhere.
Yeah. As long as I can do it electronically, I'm a little more reliable, as Sam will attest, getting me into the office to sign things is, hit or miss. So,
I mean, if the
yeah,
chair
Sam,
or the co-chair
there.
are available to do that electronically, it's a no-brainer.
So would one of you like to volunteer?
I mean, to Pete's point, in terms of, cleanliness, I don't mind doing it, so long as we can copy paste and steal their model.
Right, yeah, Eileen did say that you are absolutely welcome to do it online. It's not, all I have to do is scan invoices to you and you can sign them like that, so.
That's fine. Whatever. Do we need to vote or do I just need to volunteer?
I don't think we actually need a vote, but at some point, and I can scan it to you tomorrow. I believe the paperwork that I have on my desk, I believe you're gonna need to sign off on it. Accepting your appointment, accepting your responsibility.
Same. And then in this spirit, does that mean Ben is the backup if I'm away on vacation in the south of France at some point? You go to the vice chair? Or
I don't think there is a backup person for that. So the good news is that originally Martha was signing my payroll because that's how I was told to do it before this all came up. She was out for a month after her surgery. I still got paid, even though she wasn't signing stuff. So if you don't sign the payroll, it's not going to affect negatively.
Okay.
I think it'll just be like a retroactive signing. The invoices I think would be a little bit different, but if that's the case, I can just talk to Eileen about what we would do. We usually don't get invoices for stuff right away anyways, so.
Okay. So with that, it sounds like we're good on that. So then we run out of items on the agenda. I see Leslie and Bob are still sitting here watching though. Do you guys have anything you want to cover? No, just here for the fun.
All night long.
God bless you.
I'll move to
All right,
adjourn
well
the
then.
meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Ben. All right, roll call. Ben.
Aye.
Brad.
Aye.
Daniel.
Yes.
Peter.
Okay.
Oh, I'll twist your arm.
Mary.
Oh, and here, we'll let Mary vote. Here she comes. Mary, would you like to vote to end the meeting?
Yes, just in time. Thanks.
All right, I will also vote in the affirmative. So good night, everybody. Thanks.
Night.
9:30. Record pace.